Welcome to the world of science function. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. The council chamber buzzed with tension, the murmurs of a dozen alien races filling the domed room like static electricity. Admiral Sarah Voss sat at the lone human seat, her fingers clenched around the chair's armrests as though holding on to some semblance of dignity. Beside her, a holographic projection of Earth flickered, an emblem of humanity's place in the galaxy, or what was left of it. The High Magistrate, a towering being of translucent, jellyfish-like flesh, floated above the council's center. Its bioluminescent tendrils pulsed, signaling its irritation. Humanity, it intoned, its voice vibrating through the chamber, has consistently violated interstellar law. Their reckless mining of forbidden zones, their contamination of protected biomes, and their incessant conflicts have endangered not just their planet but the delicate balance of our galaxy. Sarah opened her mouth to retort, but the magistrate silenced her with a flash of its light. The council has decided. Humans are hereby expelled from the Galactic Concord. The words hit like a physical blow. Sarah's vision blurred as gasps rippled through the chamber. Humanity, once a tentative but growing presence among the stars, was now cast out, abandoned to their isolated corner of space. She rose slowly, every movement a defiance. "You can turn your backs on us," she said, her voice low and steady. "But don't mistake this for our end. We've built empires from the ashes before." She left the chamber under the watchful eyes of representatives who wouldn't mourn her departure. Her boots echoed on the polished floor, a drumbeat of defiance. The scene outside the council station was no better. Protesters, mostly alien factions emboldened by humanity's fall from grace, jeered and hurled holographic signs depicting Earth as a wasteland. Sarah ignored them, marching toward her shuttle with her head high. She didn't flinch even when a glowing orb, a member of the Fomoran delegation, floated closer, its voice buzzing in her earpiece. "This was inevitable," it said. "Your kind lacks the discipline to coexist." "And yet here we are," Sarah replied coldly, stepping onto the ramp of her ship. Once aboard, Sarah slammed the hatch shut and slumped into the pilot's chair. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Damien Cho, was waiting, his expression tight. "They did it," he said. "Those cowards actually did it." Sarah nodded, her hands trembling despite her efforts to control them. "We're alone now, Damien." "Alone doesn't mean defeated," he said. "It never has for us." Back on Earth, the news of their expulsion spread like wildfire. The once thriving orbital trade stations went dark as alien vessels abandoned them. Ports that had bustled with interstellar commerce fell silent. Humanity was cut off from the technological advances it had come to rely on, the alien alliances it had worked so hard to secure, and the resources it desperately needed. In the middle of it all, Sarah stood in the ruined remains of the United Earth Defense Command, now a hollowed-out shell of bureaucracy and outdated equipment. Generals and politicians shouted over one another, but Sarah silenced them with a sharp command. "Enough," she barked. "We're not here to mourn. We're here to fight." A murmur of unease passed through the room. One of the older generals, a man whose uniform bore the marks of long service, folded his arms. "Fight? Against the council? Against every species out there?" "No," Sarah replied. "We fight for survival. We fight to rebuild. And most importantly, we fight to show the galaxy that humans don't need their pity, or their approval." The room fell silent, and in that silence, a spark ignited. Weeks later, deep within Earth's abandoned asteroid mining fields, Sarah's vision began to take shape. Engineers salvaged scrap from derelict space stations, scientists reverse-engineered alien tech left behind in humanity's haste to comply with the Council's decrees, and soldiers trained with a renewed sense of purpose. But it was the civilians who surprised Sarah the most. Farmers converted tractors into fuel-efficient transports. Artists reimagined communication systems as propaganda tools. Hackers, once vilified, became the backbone of an intelligence network that spanned the solar system. One night, Sarah wandered into a workshop where Damien and a team of mechanics were hunched over a prototype. The machine gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights, a spacecraft unlike any other, its hull lined with human ingenuity and alien-derived tech. Damien looked up, a smirk playing on his face. "We're calling it the Iron Dawn. She's fast, durable, and built to outmaneuver anything the Council throws at us." Sarah ran her hand over the ship's surface, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time since their expulsion. "This isn't just a ship," she said softly. "It's a message." "To who?" Damien asked. "To everyone," she said, her voice hardening. "The Council. The galaxy. And us." The first test flight of the Iron Dawn took place under the watchful eyes of a skeleton crew and a handful of reporters. As the ship roared to life, its engines cutting through the void with a primal scream, Sarah felt a surge of pride. But that pride was tempered by the knowledge of the challenges ahead. The Council's gaze would inevitably turn back to humanity, and when it did, it wouldn't be with mercy. Still, as the Iron Dawn soared into the black expanse of space, Sarah couldn't help but smile. They had been kicked out of the Council, stripped of their resources, and left to fend for themselves. But humanity wasn't out of the fight. It was only just beginning. The Iron Dawn's engines hummed with life as it streaked through the asteroid belt, weaving effortlessly between floating debris. Sarah stood on the command deck, watching the holographic display flicker with data streams. Her crew was a patchwork of Earth's best, engineers, scientists, and military officers, all united by a shared determination to defy the odds. "Enemy signal," called Lieutenant Damien Cho, his voice tense but steady. "2 Council frigates. No markings. They're closing fast." The bridge went silent. Sarah's jaw tightened as she stepped forward. "Evasive maneuvers. Let's see what they want." The Iron Dawn banked sharply, its modified thrusters blazing trails through the dark. On the screen, the frigates pursued, their sleek forms bristling with weaponry. A communication request pinged the console, and Sarah accepted it. The hologram of a reptilian being materialized, its scales gleaming like polished obsidian. It was a member of the Xeric, a species infamous for their merciless efficiency. "Captain Voss," it hissed, "you are in violation of the Concord's decree. Surrender your vessel, or we will destroy you." Sarah folded her arms, her tone icy. "Violation? We're in sovereign human space. You have no jurisdiction here." The Xeric's eyes narrowed. "The Council granted authority to enforce the embargo. Compliance is not optional." "Funny," Sarah said. "We didn't get the memo." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "Prepare for battle. Let's give them a reason to rethink their authority." The Iron Dawn's first engagement was brutal. The frigates moved in tandem, their precision betraying decades of interstellar dominance. Energy bolts streaked through space, narrowly missing the Iron Dawn as Sarah's crew scrambled to respond. "Shields at 60%, shouted an officer. "Return fire." Sarah barked. The ship's cannons roared to life, unleashing a volley of kinetic rounds. One frigate's shields flared under the onslaught, but its companion retaliated, sending a plasma burst that rattled the Iron Dawn's hull. In the chaos, Damien leaned over to Sarah. "We can't outgun them, but we might outthink them." "Do it," Sarah said. "Make it count." Damien's fingers danced over the controls, and the Iron Dawn suddenly veered toward the asteroid field. The Council frigates hesitated for a fraction of a second, long enough for the Iron Dawn to disappear among the jagged rocks. The frigates followed, their scans probing the asteroid field. But Sarah's crew had one advantage: human ingenuity. They activated an experimental cloaking device, hiding the Iron Dawn in plain sight. The frigates prowled closer, unaware of their prey lurking just meters away. "Now," Sarah whispered. The Iron Dawn sprang to life, its weapons targeting a weakened section of the nearest frigate. The blast tore through the ship's hull, sending it spinning into an asteroid. The second frigate retaliated, but the Iron Dawn danced around its fire, delivering calculated strikes that left it crippled. "Signal from the remaining ship," Damien said. "They're retreating. Let them go, Sarah said, her voice cold. Let them tell the council what we're capable of. The battle was a victory, but it came at a cost. The Iron Dawn limped back to Earth, its hull scorched and systems strained. The council wouldn't take this loss lightly, and Sarah knew their reprisal would be swift. Back on Earth, the news of the skirmish spread like wildfire. Some hailed Sarah as a hero, a symbol of human resilience. Others condemned her actions, fearing they'd provoke the council into open war. In a dimly lit war room, Sarah faced her advisors. Holographic displays showed intercepted communications, including the council's official statement. They called the incident an unprovoked attack and labeled humanity a rogue species. We're outnumbered and outgunned, said General Carter, his tone grim. If they bring their fleet, Earth won't stand a chance. They won't bring the fleet, Sarah said. They'll send mercenaries, bounty hunters, anyone who can take us out without risking their reputation. That doesn't exactly inspire confidence, Damien muttered. It should, Sarah replied. It means they're scared. As the council's forces regrouped, humanity prepared for the inevitable. Factories once used for civilian goods were repurposed for military production. Scientists worked around the clock, finding ways to weaponize everyday technologies. Even artists and writers joined the effort, creating propaganda to rally the population. In a hidden lab on the moon, a team of engineers unveiled their latest creation, a fleet of automated drones, designed to act as a first line of defense. Sarah inspected the prototypes, impressed by their adaptability. These could buy us precious time, she said. We're calling them Rooks, the lead engineer explained. They're fast, efficient, and expendable. Perfect for hit-and-run tactics. Sarah nodded. Good work. Deploy them as soon as possible. The council's response came sooner than expected. Reports flooded in of mercenary ships attacking outposts on the fringes of human space. The Iron Dawn was dispatched to intercept one such group, a notorious crew known as the Veil Hunters. The Veil Hunters ambushed the Iron Dawn in orbit around Europa, their sleek, black ships darting through the ice-covered moon shadows. Sarah's crew fought valiantly, but the mercenaries were relentless. The Iron Dawn took heavy damage, its shields flickering dangerously low. This is getting ugly, Damien said, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead. Suggestions? Use the Rooks, Sarah ordered. All of them. The drones launched in a swarm, their small size and agility allowing them to outmaneuver the Veil Hunters' ships. One by one, the mercenaries fell, their arrogance no match for the ingenuity of human design. As the last Veil Hunter ship exploded, Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Status report, she said. Damage is severe, but we're operational, Damien replied. The drones performed better than expected. They'll remember this, Sarah said. And they'll come back stronger. As the Iron Dawn limped back to Earth once again, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The council wouldn't stop until humanity was crushed, and the next battle would be even more brutal. But as she looked at her crew, exhausted but determined, she knew one thing for certain. They weren't going down without a fight. The Iron Dawn hung in low orbit over Earth, its battle-worn hull a patchwork of repairs and scars. On the bridge, Sarah Voss stared at the tactical display, her expression grim. The council had escalated their efforts. Dozens of ships, mercenaries, bounty hunters, and private militias were converging on humanity's borders. It was clear, they weren't just here to enforce the embargo anymore. They were here to end humanity's defiance once and for all. Fleet incoming, Damien said, his voice tight. Looks like a combined force, council frigates leading, mercenary support and formation. Sarah nodded, her mind racing. What's the count? 37 confirmed hostiles, came the reply from Tactical. Possibly more behind their perimeter. And us? Sarah asked. We've got the Iron Dawn, 3 refitted freighters, and the Rook Swarm, Damien said, glancing at her with a mix of determination and concern. Outnumbered, outgunned, and outclassed. A wry smile tugged at Sarah's lips. Just how we like it. As the enemy fleet closed in, Earth's defense network hummed to life. Former communication satellites, now armed with makeshift railguns, turned their sights to the stars. The rooks swarmed ahead, their movements precise and chaotic, forming a living shield around the human ships. On the bridge of the Iron Dawn, Sarah addressed the crew. "This is it," she said. "They think they can snuff us out, but they've underestimated what it means to fight for survival. Today, we remind them what humanity is capable of." A chorus of affirmatives echoed through the bridge. The tactical display lit up as the enemy fleet entered range. "Enemy vessels locking weapons," Damien reported. "They're going for a full frontal assault." Sarah nodded. "Good. Let's give them something to remember. All ships, engage." The battle erupted in a blaze of light and sound. Kinetic rounds and plasma bursts tore through the void as the Iron Dawn led the charge. The rooks darted between enemy ships, overwhelming their targeting systems with sheer numbers. Explosions lit the darkness as the first mercenary vessels fell. "Two down," Damien called, his hands flying over the controls. "But the frigates are holding steady." "Focus fire on the lead frigate," Sarah ordered. "If we break their formation, the rest will fall apart." The Iron Dawn's cannons roared, targeting the largest ship at the heart of the enemy fleet. The vessel's shields flared under the assault, but it returned fire with devastating precision. A plasma beam grazed the Iron Dawn, sending a shudder through the ship. "Shields at 40%, a technician shouted. "Hold steady," Sarah said. "We're not done yet." Meanwhile, the rooks proved to be the wild card humanity needed. Operating on adaptive algorithms, they swarmed a group of mercenary fighters, weaving through their ranks and crippling their engines. The chaos created a gap in the enemy's lines, and Sarah seized the opportunity. "Bring us through that opening," she commanded. "Target their support ships." The Iron Dawn surged forward, its weapons tearing into the enemy's supply vessels. Without reinforcements or repairs, the mercenary fleet began to falter. "They're repositioning," Damien said, his voice laced with excitement. "We've got them scrambling." But the Council frigates were far from finished. One of them unleashed a barrage of missiles, each one guided by advanced targeting systems. The Iron Dawn's point defense guns managed to intercept most of them, but one slipped through, slamming into the ship's stern. "Direct hit," a voice called out. "Engine 3 is offline." "Redirect power to the remaining engines," Sarah ordered, gripping the console to steady herself. "We're not going down." As the battle raged, Sarah's mind raced for a way to turn the tide. The enemy's numbers were overwhelming, and even the rooks couldn't hold them off forever. She needed something unexpected, something bold. An idea struck her. "Damien, how's our cloaking system?" "Damaged but functional," he replied. "Why?" Sarah leaned closer. "We're going to use it. Prep the Iron Dawn for a stealth run." Damien's eyes widened. "You want to sneak past their fleet?" "No," Sarah said, a dangerous glint in her eye. "I want to get behind their command ship." The plan was audacious. The Iron Dawn powered down its weapons and engaged the cloaking device, disappearing from enemy sensors. Under cover of the rook swarm, the ship slipped past the chaos of battle and closed in on the command frigate, a massive vessel bristling with weaponry and shielded by layers of defensive systems. "Approaching target," Damien said. "They don't see us." "Good," Sarah said. "Prepare the EMP." The Iron Dawn had one last trick up its sleeve, an experimental electromagnetic pulse weapon, designed to disable enemy ships without causing permanent damage. It was a gamble. If it didn't work, they'd be sitting ducks. "EMP is charged," Damien said. "Range in 10 seconds. Sarah gripped the edge of her seat, her heart pounding. "Fire on my command." 3, 2, 1. Fire. The EMP detonated, sending a wave of energy rippling through space. The command frigate's lights flickered and died, its weapons falling silent. Around it, several smaller ships were caught in the blast, their systems overloaded. "They're vulnerable." Damien shouted. All ships, target the command vessel. The Iron Dawn and its allies unleashed a barrage of firepower, hammering the crippled frigate until it erupted in a brilliant explosion. The remaining enemy ships, leaderless and disorganized, began to retreat. On the bridge of the Iron Dawn, a cheer erupted as the last enemy ship fled. Sarah sank into her chair, exhaustion washing over her. They had won, but the cost was steep. The Iron Dawn was heavily damaged, and dozens of drones and ships lay in ruins. Casualty report, she said quietly. Still coming in, Damien replied, his tone subdued. But we held the line. Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the shattered remains of the enemy fleet. They had fought with everything they had, and they had survived. But she knew the Council would return, stronger and more determined. Send a message to the Council, she said. Tell them humanity isn't going anywhere. As the Iron Dawn limped back to Earth, Sarah allowed herself a rare moment of hope. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. For the first time, she believed they could do it again. The Iron Dawn glided into Earth's atmosphere, its once gleaming hull scorched and battered from the brutal engagement. Below, humanity waited with bated breath. On every screen and radio frequency, the message was clear, they had won. Against all odds, they had pushed back the Council's forces. But the victory was fragile, and the question loomed, what came next? Sarah Voss stepped off the ship to a crowd gathered at the spaceport. The air was electric, filled with cheers and applause. Families waved banners, children held makeshift models of the Iron Dawn, and holographic projections replayed clips of the battle. For a brief moment, humanity celebrated not just survival, but defiance. Yet Sarah's gaze was distant as she addressed the crowd. This is a victory, she began, her voice firm. Not just for the soldiers who fought, but for every engineer who built the rooks, every scientist who cracked alien codes, every farmer who turned their fields into supply chains. This was a victory for humanity. The crowd erupted in applause, but she raised a hand to quiet them. And it is a reminder, she continued, her tone somber, that our fight is far from over. The Council will return. They will come stronger, angrier, and more determined. We have shown them what we're capable of, but we must show them we can endure. In the weeks that followed, Earth began to rebuild. The Iron Dawn was pulled into dry dock, where teams of mechanics and engineers worked around the clock to repair and improve the ship. Factories churned out more rooks, their designs refined with data from the battle. Even the smallest settlements contributed, turning scrap metal and surplus goods into vital resources. Sarah worked tirelessly alongside her crew, but the weight of leadership was heavier than ever. She spent sleepless nights poring over intercepted Council communications, piecing together their next moves. Damien often found her in the command center, holograms glowing around her like specters. You need to rest, he said one night, placing a steaming mug of coffee on the console. The Council isn't sending their fleet tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow, Sarah replied, her eyes scanning a map of the galaxy. But soon. And we need to be ready. Damien hesitated, then sat beside her. We've done the impossible, he said. We've shown the galaxy we can stand on our own. That's not just a victory, it's a warning. Sarah glanced at him, her expression softening. A warning they won't ignore. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for the idea that no species has the right to decide another's fate. Meanwhile, whispers of humanity's triumph spread beyond Earth. Alien refugees, exiles, and dissidents, many who had suffered under the Council's heavy hand, began to take notice. Messages flooded into the Iron Dawn's network, offering support, intelligence, and sometimes just words of encouragement. One such message came from a group of alien scientists on the run from the Council. They offered blueprints for a revolutionary energy core, technology far beyond what Earth had access to. Sarah convened her advisors to discuss the offer. It could give us the edge we need, she said. But if the Council finds out we're working with them, it'll paint an even bigger target on our backs. They're already hunting us, Damien pointed out. If we're going to fight, We need every advantage we can get. After a tense debate, the decision was made. The scientists were smuggled to Earth under the cover of a meteor shower. They brought not just technology, but knowledge of the Council's weaknesses, information Sarah knew could change the balance of power. As Earth's defenses grew, so did its ambitions. Humanity was no longer content to simply survive. They began reaching out to other marginalized species, forging alliances where the Council had sown division. Sarah spearheaded the effort, meeting with alien leaders on neutral ground, often under the threat of discovery. One such meeting took place on an abandoned space station, where Sarah sat across from a member of the Fomoran, the same species that had jeered her at the Council's expulsion. The alien's glowing orb-like form shifted uneasily as it spoke. "You seek allies," it said. "Yet you must know the risk. The Council will see this as an act of rebellion." "They already do," Sarah replied. "But rebellion is what they fear most. The Council thrives on control. If we unite, we threaten their very foundation." The Fomoran was silent for a long moment before responding. "Perhaps you are right. The galaxy needs a new kind of leadership. One that values coexistence over domination." A tentative alliance was born that day, one of many that would shape humanity's role in the galaxy. Months after the battle, the Council made their next move. A massive diplomatic fleet arrived at the edge of human space, broadcasting a message to Earth. It wasn't an attack, it was a demand for negotiations. Sarah and her team deliberated for hours. It could be a trap, a ploy to draw Earth's leaders into the open. But it was also an opportunity, one they couldn't afford to ignore. The negotiations took place aboard a neutral station, far from Earth. Sarah entered the chamber flanked by Damien and two advisors. Across the table sat representatives of the Council, their forms diverse but united in their disdain. "You've made quite a mess," the High Magistrate said, its bioluminescent tendrils pulsing. "Your actions have disrupted the balance of the galaxy." "The balance you impose," Sarah countered. "A balance that benefits only those at the top." The room grew tense. The Council representatives exchanged glances, their authority challenged in a way they hadn't anticipated. "What do you want?" the magistrate demanded. "Freedom," Sarah said. "For Earth, and for every species you've subjugated. No more embargoes. No more interference. And if you can't grant that, then you'd better prepare for a fight." There was a long silence. Finally, the magistrate spoke. "You have forced our hand. We will consider your demands, but know this, defiance comes at a price." As Sarah returned to the Iron Dawn, she knew the battle was far from over. The Council's grudging acknowledgement of humanity's strength was only the beginning. But she also knew that humanity had changed. They were no longer the outcasts of the galaxy, fighting to be heard. They were a force to be reckoned with, a force that wouldn't back down. Standing on the bridge of the Iron Dawn, Sarah gazed out at the stars. They were no longer symbols of isolation but of opportunity. Somewhere out there, the future was waiting, and humanity was ready to seize it. For the first time, she smiled. "We're just getting started." The stars stretched endlessly before them, no longer indifferent specks of light but markers of a future humanity was determined to claim. The Iron Dawn cruised through the void, its repair hull gleaming under the faint glow of a distant sun. Sarah Voss stood at the observation deck, her hands clasped behind her back, her reflection sharp in the glass. "Report from the outer colonies," Damien said, entering quietly. "Production is ahead of schedule. The Rook fleets are operational, and the new energy cores are being integrated into our ships." "And the alliances?" Sarah asked without turning. "They're holding," Damien replied. "The Fomoran have sent advisors to train our engineers on shielding tech, and the Saren have started patrolling the borders alongside our forces." Sarah nodded. The alliances were fragile, built on mutual necessity and a shared defiance of the Council. But they were a start, a thread connecting species long divided by fear and control. "What about the Council?" she asked. Damien hesitated. "Quiet so far. No major fleet movements. But you know they're regrouping. They always are, Sarah said, a hard edge to her voice. And so are we. Earth had transformed in the months since the battle. The once abandoned orbital stations hummed with activity, factories churned out advanced ships and drones, and cities glowed with the vitality of a united planet. The scars of conflict remained, but they had become symbols of resilience. The newly formed United Earth Alliance was no longer alone. Representatives from allied species attended strategy meetings, their perspectives reshaping humanity's approach to survival and diplomacy. The exchange of ideas led to breakthroughs in technology and culture, a merging of ingenuity that none of them could have achieved alone. In one such meeting, Sarah sat with her advisors and alien allies, discussing the next steps. A holographic map displayed the galaxy's territories, with the Council's influence marked in red. The Council's grip is weaker than it seems, said Rikal, a reptilian strategist from the Zarek. Their forces are stretched thin. More species are questioning their authority, inspired by your actions. But questioning isn't enough, Damien said. If we're going to break the Council's hold, we need more than defiance. We need a coalition. Rikal flicked his forked tongue thoughtfully. A coalition requires trust. And trust is a commodity the Council has spent centuries destroying. Sarah leaned forward, her gaze steady. Then we rebuild it. One alliance, one victory at a time. The Iron Dawn became the vanguard of humanity's new mission. It carried emissaries to distant worlds, delivering not just diplomacy but hope. On planets ruled by fear, it became a symbol of rebellion. On the fringes of the galaxy, it inspired whispers of a united front against oppression. But not every mission was peaceful. In the remote Niral sector, the Iron Dawn intercepted a distress signal. A mining colony, long exploited by the Council, was under siege by mercenaries sent to quash a labor revolt. By the time the Iron Dawn arrived, the colony's defenses were in ruins, and Council-allied forces were closing in. Get us between the colony and those ships, Sarah ordered. Deploy the rooks. The Iron Dawn's engines roared as it plunged into the fray. The rook swarm darted through the enemy fleet, drawing fire away from the colony. On the ground, human and allied soldiers worked together to evacuate civilians and secure key positions. It wasn't an easy fight. The mercenaries were well-equipped and ruthless, but the Iron Dawn's presence turned the tide. When the dust settled, the colony was battered but free, its people looking to the stars with new resolve. Back on Earth, Sarah addressed the leaders of the United Earth Alliance and their allies. The room was filled with voices, languages, and forms as diverse as the galaxy itself. But they were united in purpose. The Council wants us divided, Sarah said, her voice resonating through the chamber. They want us to believe that resistance is futile. But every battle we win, every alliance we forge, proves them wrong. She gestured to the map behind her, now dotted with new allies and liberated territories. This is more than survival. It's the beginning of something greater. A galaxy where no species is left to fend for itself. Where unity is our strength. The room erupted in applause. For the first time in living memory, there was hope for a future free from the Council's shadow. In the quiet hours after the meeting, Sarah returned to the Iron Dawn. The ship was docked in orbit, its repairs and upgrades complete. As she walked its corridors, she felt the weight of her decisions, the lives lost and saved, the fragile alliances and the battles yet to come. Damien joined her on the bridge, where the stars stretched endlessly before them. You ever think about what's out there? He asked, leaning on the console. All the time, Sarah replied. But I don't just think about what's out there. I think about what we're going to make out there. Damien grinned. Bold as ever. She returned the smile. It's who we are. The Iron Dawn's engines hummed as the ship prepared for its next mission. There would be more battles, more sacrifices, more challenges. But humanity wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to thrive, to build a future where the galaxy's stars belonged to everyone. As the ship slipped into the void, Sarah whispered a promise to the darkness. We're not just survivors, she said. We're pioneers. And the Iron Dawn carried that promise into the unknown. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss next stories.